Okay, so I've been able to sequence the three different parts on circuit with my Octatrack. I have the audio running through my inputs on the Octatrack, and that's great, but I don't really want to have to rely on a secondary piece of gear. I like to have everything contained in my Octatrack. And thankfully, the Octatrack happens to be a sampler, so I could sample the audio from the three different parts on my circuit and just have everything contained on my Octatrack in this project. Now, I have three different parts, and if I go back to my audio section, I have 4 flex machines here, tracks 1 through 4, and I'm only using the first one. The first one has the sample that we recorded and sliced. The other 3 flex machines are blank. And this is perfect because I have 3 different parts on circuit that I want to record. And if you remember, if I double tap on these, I already set it up so that these 3 flex machines that are available are accessing the track recorders that would normally be associated with those tracks. Track 2 has track recorder 2. Track 3 has track recorder 3. Track 4 has track recorder 4. So what I want to do is I want to record the audio coming from circuit. I want to record those individual parts to these individual tracks. And I want to make sure that when I record them, that they start at the beginning of the bar and they record for just the length of the pattern. So let me go ahead and I'm going to play the beat, but I'm going to mute out everything except for the first MIDI track. That's the first thing I want to record. All right, so let me back out of here and I'm going to go into my recording setup. I'm going to hold function and record. Now I hit C and D to go to the second page of the setup here. And I actually want to make sure I'm on the right track. I don't want to record this to track 4. I want to record this to track 2. So recording 2, setup 2. Now if I look over here, I can see it says quantize recording. So it'll quantize the length of the recording based on the amount of steps that I tell it to record for. So I can either quantize it for the pattern length, or I can give it a specific number of steps that it should record. If I go over to the first setup page here, there we go. All right. So if I go to the first setup page, before I do anything, I want to make sure I'm recording from the proper input. So circuit is not coming into input A and B. It's coming into input C and D. So I want to make sure input A and B is disabled. All right. The recording length. This pattern is a 32-step pattern. So I'm going to change the recording length to 32 steps. There we go. So it records no more or no less. The trig function, it's set to hold. I'm going to change that to 1, 2. So then that way I could either press the record button, it'll start recording, and then I press it again and it'll stop. But that's not how I'm going to record this. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use Record Trigs in order to record this. This is very easy to do, but we want to make sure that we do it properly. I'm going to go ahead and press play here. And we see the playhead is moving through our sequence. If I have my record button, normally this would trigger the grid recording mode, and it's doing the same thing here, except that instead of entering a note that's going to play, we're going to insert a trig that's going to trigger the beginning of our recording. Now, if I look over here, I can see that this is set up to only go through 16 steps, but I want to record for a length of 32 steps. So I could either put a record trig here at the beginning, it'll start recording at the beginning of the bar, and then I could quickly remove it, or I could just change the scale length for this particular track to 32 steps. There we go. All right, so let me go back into my record mode here. Record length to 32 steps. It's going to record the inputs of C and D. Right now I'm only listening to that first synth part on circuit. I'm going to put a trig here. We see it's recording. And then it stops. Now I'm going to go into my mixer and I'm going to turn down the input on C and D. I haven't stopped my sequencer though. I've gotten out of my record mode. We recorded this into the second track recorder. And now if I press, insert this step here. So now that's the audio that we just recorded. If I hold my track button and go to edit, I can see there's the audio. If I wanted to, I could slice this, do all the typical editing functions that I would normally do. But what I mainly want to do is I want to make sure I save this. I don't want this to be stuck in the track recorder. So before I get too happy with what I've done, let me go into here and I want to save and assign the sample. So I'm going to go ahead and change the name of this. I'm going to call this bass. And I'll just put circ so I don't forget that I got it from circuit. SIR see, there we go. Okay, bass circ, there we go. Assigned to free flex, yes. So it's been assigned to flex slot 2. I'll go into my flex slots, and there we go. So now I can put that there. Now that track recorder is free to be used for something else, and if I accidentally record something else into it, I don't have to worry about losing the sound that I just got. So let's go back to my mixer. I'm going to deactivate the first track from circuit. I'm going to activate the second track from circuit, and let me turn the input on circuit back up so I can hear it. Now for this particular sound, there's some effects that I can use on circuit, and it might be fun to kind of play around with these effects in real time. So even though it's a 32-step pattern, I'm going to make this a 64-step recording. So let me go ahead and stop that. Go into my record settings. I want to make sure that I'm on the proper track. I'm recording this to track 3. Track 3 is going to listen for the inputs C and D. The track length, I'm going to make it 64 steps instead of 32 steps. And I'm going to make sure that the scale setting here is set accordingly. 64 steps. All right, so now, let me go back in here, play this again. So again, I'm making the step length longer so I can affect the effects in real time here. When I'm ready, I'll put my record trig here. When it passes that trig, it'll start recording. Get rid of that trig so it doesn't keep recording into the buffer. Okay, so it's recorded that. Get out of my record mode here. Now I can turn down my direct input, so I'm not hearing the audio from circuit. And let's see. Go into my grid recording mode. I'll place my trig on the 1 here, and then when it comes back around, we'll hear the audio that we sampled. So there's the sample. And again, go ahead and save and assign this. Now you can wait until you sampled everything and then save and assign and name them. I just prefer to do it this way so I don't get confused. Let me see. So we're going to call this, we'll just call it synth. Since I'm saving all this stuff in the program directory, I'm not really too worried about it because I'll be able to identify them by the project they're associated with. So we're going to call that synth, save the sample, assign to free flex. It's going to assign that to flex 3. Go to track 3. I'm going to change this to flex slot 3. All right, so last step now is, let me see, oops, I don't want to go back to MIDI. Go to my mixer here, deactivate both the synth parts from circuit. I'll enable the drums. Go ahead and turn C and D back up so I can hear them. I'm going to record that here on track 4. Now I can also utilize some effects for the drums if I choose to. Might be kind of fun. So let's go into the effects here and let's see. Not for that. Maybe some reverb for the snare. All right, so let me mute track 3. That doesn't need to play all the time. All right, so going back to our record. I'm recording from C and D. I'll go for 64 steps here as well, just so I can add some variation to the drums. I'm going to increase the scale length for this particular track to 64 steps. And again, I'm going to record this using a record trig. So I'll place that here. We're starting to record. All right, so same thing. I've recorded now all 3 of those different sounds, and now I can play them simply using the samples. And here we go. The track, go into the edit here. There's our drums. So let me just go ahead and save this. Save an assigned sample. And yes, drums. Boom. Assign a free flex, flex 4. I go here, I'm gonna change this to flex slot 4. Beautiful, and now everything's here. And just like the audio that we sampled before, all of this will adhere to time stretching, any of the different parameters that we affect. We can use all that to manipulate the audio here. All right, so we've recorded the audio from our external MIDI gear. We've been able to use Record Trigs, and by doing that, everything was recorded perfectly in sync with everything else that we have here. And just to verify that, let's go ahead and bring in the audio parts. Quite nice, quite nice.